All right, you're listening to 91.5 WUML Lowell Blues Deluxe, and I have Garnet Grimm with me, one of the surviving members of Savoy Brown. And hello there, Garnet. How are you?
Hi, John. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. We're
Well,
doing pretty good.
I appreciate you taking some time out to talk about all the things that are going on these days with you guys, the last two guys, you and Pat, and um, I just wanted to go back to a few years ago when I saw you at the Bull Run back in 2019, the last time I saw you. And
Yeah.
Kim was, that night, Kim was wiped out at the end of the night. I mentioned that to him that night.
Uh, yeah. He used to put 100% in, so it doesn't surprise me. I don't know. Pretty sure that was before his illness, but he gave 100%. So, uh, he often at the end of the night he was exhausted. So,
Yeah,
uh,
really.
yeah. Yeah, and
So so tell me a little bit about pre Savoy Brown, what you were doing before Savoy Brown.
well, I'm from the central New York area of New York, and so I'm above the city, but I'm below Canada. And I've spent most of my life with regional, local bands around New York, and did some touring with some of those bands, but none of them were as well known or obviously as Savoy Brown. Kim was living in our area up on Lake Ontario, married a lovely woman from that area. And I was invited back in 1999, I was invited to do some recording with Kim by a mutual friend. It had nothing to do with Savoy Brown. It was a solo venture that Kim was doing. So uh, I was pleasantly surprised that day when I got in the studio that Pat DeSalvo was up playing bass. And the three of us hit up a real friendship starting that day and continued all the way to the present time where Kim passed in December, of course. We've had a long history together, and it wasn't until 2009 that Kim had a bass player that was having some health issues, and Pat was asked to cover some dates. So, uh, in turn, Pat called me and said, "Hey, do you think you could help me get up to speed for these dates? We got to, got to do some rehearsing with Kim." I said, "Oh man, I'd love to." So we uh, we all got together out at Kim's place and learned a bunch of the set to get Pat up to speed. And so it was shortly after that that Kim decided that he was going to make some permanent changes, and Pat was quite instrumental in trying to get me behind the drum throne. And Kim agreed, and we started to rehearse as Savoy Brown officially around 2009. And so that took us all the way to this present album, Blues All Around.
And the album you talk about is Blues Like Midnight. You were on his solo record,
Oh
correct?
yeah, right. Yep, that was the one. I always like to say two things came out of that day: the Blues Like Midnight recording and the friendship between the three of us. I had known Pat. I had known Pat for years, actually, prior to that meeting that day. Just from also, he had played with local regional acts from around the area, so I had run into him several times, but but this was the first time we had ever really played together as a rhythm section, and so it was great. Though he's like my rhythm section buddy.
So tell me about that. Now that you're working with him on his solo record, and he's bringing you into Savoy Brown. What was it like learning all those songs that historically that he had put together with all the other bands? What was that like for you?
Well, it was an honor actually. I got to say, I was well aware of Kim's history when I met him. He had already had a very long, successful career, already by that time, and it was really an honor and a little intimidating. I remember the first time I walked into his studio. Um, there was a picture of him and Muddy Waters together, and I thought, wow, that's really cool, and
A fanboy
so
moment, as I call it. You were a fanboy
yeah.
moment, right?
Yeah, and but we started playing, and we really hit it off as friends, and yeah, I really tell you, I miss him dearly. We used to talk a lot, text a lot. When we weren't on the road, he would often call me every Tuesday when we weren't on the road, and we would catch up, and we'd talk about anything from baseball to news, and but it always ended up going back to music, and he would say, I'm going to send you some demos, let me know what this is, let me know what you think, he so I really miss him.
So
Yeah,
what was it like to
but
play? Go ahead.
yeah, so I mean, the Blues Like Midnight recording was really just an acoustic recording, and we actually went out and played a little bit to support that later on. Uh, Kim would do some. We did some of the Savoy Brown songs, uh, sort of revamped. The classic ones revamped for the acoustic setting, and then. Uh, but yeah, learning the set was a little involved for me. Kim does a really good job uh, of mixing the old stuff in with the new. He's definitely one of those guys that you know has to play. He always had to play some of those well-known songs like "Tell Mama" and "Street Corner Talkin'," "Poor Girl," "I'm Tired," because if you didn't play some of those, people would say, I came all the way to hear. I drove for 3 hours to hear Hellbound Train, and you didn't play it. So he always had to try and work the old stuff in, and he did a very good job of doing that. The first part of the set, you would get a lot of the older material, and the later part, he would try to work in whatever he was, the current stuff, whatever he was doing at the time, and whatever the band was doing at the time. And he did a very good job at that. Um, he would always end the shows with Hellbound Train, maybe Louisiana Blues, some of those. And the Savoy Brown boogie. He would often use that one. And I always feel myself and Pat were very lucky that, um, we got to play those classic songs that the band's well known for. But I was on quite a few recordings that I got to do new material that was unique to our situation and our setup and the trio. And I'm grateful for that. Kim was just a creative giant. I mean, would write all the time. So he just, there was always music to be worked on with
So
him.
so what was the first record that you were on? Train to
Voodoo.
Nowhere or Voodoo Moon?
No, yeah, mine was Voodoo Moon. My first recording with him was Voodoo Moon, and uh, then we had several after that. Witchy Feelin' was probably the one that did the best for us. It did reach number one on Billboard on the blues charts. So that was a really special record for me, and I really think the band at that time, we were playing so much and touring together, and we were playing a lot together. So I think that made a huge impact on how the record came out. And the band was very tight, and unfortunately, the one that we did during we recorded in 2019. Uh, or I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm trying to remember now. I think it was 2000, March of 2019, maybe. And we did the recording for Ain't Done Yet. And it was just prior to the we finished everything just prior to the COVID crisis, and we couldn't tour to support that. And that was tough. That was a tough one. Couldn't support it. When it came out, but and this time too. So there's a couple of records that came out that we couldn't tour for, but we're doing a lot to try and keep Kim's legacy out there and keep the songs alive. So
I
we're
got a
gonna.
couple questions that are out of left field. First one,
Okay.
you ready?
Yeah. Yes.
Have you met any of the former members prior to you while you've been on tour?
Yes. Well, the ones that I have met honestly and had some interaction with were the Fog.
The guys from Foghat.
Shows quite a few of them with Foghat, and so Roger Earl would some often come and sit in, and he's just a sweetheart of a man, He and his wife are wonderful, and we met in Canada. We met Tony Stevens. Uh, uh, he had a band that was on the same bill we were on, and we were in the same hotel. I remember, so we had breakfast with him, and so yeah, got to meet a couple of them. But I would have liked to. I've always heard stories about Chris Hulden, and I've never met him. So I'd like to. That was one guy I never got to meet that I'd like to.
Yeah, I got an interesting story about my interview with Kim. We talked about the guys from Foghat, and he had said to
Uh
me
huh. I'm
how
so.
how difficult it was when they left for him because he had to regroup the whole band. And
Yeah.
I said to him, I said, you should be proud of the fact that they went away, they went off and did what they did because they were in your band originally and they became even more famous. I said, so
Yeah.
that's a tribute to you. And he
Yeah.
said, and he said to me, he goes, I never thought of it that way. He goes, you're right.
Yeah, I was. I think we were at a merch table, trying to the exact time. I can't situation. I can't remember. We were at a merch table after a gig, and I remember a gentleman came up and said, "Hey, were you ever in Foghat?" And Kim said, "No, sir, but Foghat was in Savoy Brown."
Yeah.
And so I thought that was a good answer, So
Well, I said to him, you should be proud of that. I said because they may not have been Foghat if they weren't in Savoy Brown. He
yeah,
goes, you're right. He goes, back then when they left, it was hard on me. He goes, but today when you say that, he goes, you're right. I should have been proud of that, and I wasn't at the time.
well, I'm sure. Yeah, it probably did hurt a little bit because he lost the whole band, and then those guys went on to really, they were really big
Yeah,
fame. Yeah, so
and they've come
um,
back and supported him through the years too when he's
oh
needed
yeah,
them. Yeah,
yeah. They're now they're all who's left is great. They've great friends. So. Uh,
Here's something else from that interview with him that I remembered that you don't. I don't know if you know this, but Kim had the first mixed race band in England.
yes, yes. Well, and that's part of what makes Kim the pioneer, right? I
Yeah,
mean, He
Yep.
really was. He really was one of the blues rock pioneers. He had a racially mixed band at a time when it was not. You
No, it
just
wasn't.
didn't see that,
No.
and you know, Pat and I have talked about that where it took all that British movement to sort of bring the blues to the forefront in America because of just what you're talking about.
Yep.
Uh, the bands and the people were more segregated at that time, and even though there was a few people, of course, that would search out blues back then, of course, but by and large, I mean, where would you hear it? I mean, they
Yeah.
were usually just segregated clubs, guys playing in those clubs, uh, and you wouldn't really cross into that, so much. So I think the whole British blues movement really brought brought it to America's, you
Yeah.
know, brought it to America, and finally people recognized, wow, this is where it came from, you know,
Yeah.
right in our backyard, So
Yeah.
yeah, it
Here,
was important.
here's my other left field question.
Yes.
Kim and Savoy Brown aren't really known for improvisation, but there's a lot of it that goes
Oh,
on.
wow. Yeah, I would say there certainly was with my time in the band. I can tell you that. Uh, I think that I mean, wow. If you were to listen to or go to any of the live shows, uh, there was several times where I can tell you, for example, Street Corner Talk, and when Kim played that, we would always honor the that first part of the song. You'd honor the recording, but once he got to that second guitar solo, I mean, that thing was going anywhere, and yeah, you weren't really. There were nights where I wasn't really sure where it was gonna land, but he always brought it in for a safe landing, well, we would be off in jam land, and there were nights where it was just really electric. I mean, the crowd responses. He would often build that second solo up to a frenzy, from a very low point to a frenzy, and it might take it could take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes for that thing to develop. And it really was there was a lot of jamming going on when I was in the band. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of those old songs, we always had those ad lib sections. Uh, Louisiana Blues had it. Uh,
Hellbound
uh,
Train, I remember.
Hellbound Train. Oh, Hellbound Train. Yeah, that's a really, could be very long, and it took on a whole kind of its own entity. It was and yeah, there was a lot of that
Ain't
going on.
superstitious. The night you guys played the bull run the last time I saw you. You were just that stretched out for quite a while.
Yeah, I used to really love I don't know how long ago it was, maybe 2013, 14, 15 area. We were doing an acoustic set. We would bring out. Kim had this electric acoustic, and uh, that he would play. It sounded great, and Pat had this electric upright, and we would do "Hard Way to Go," "I'm Tired." Trying to think of some of the other ones that we would do. That and they were always usually the older songs we would do. But man, it was such a cool format to do those things. And he would Black Knight he would do like that, and he would stretch it out. I mean, yeah, there was a lot of jamming and that kind of stuff going on. So yeah, it was. They definitely could. They were a jam type band for sure. You know,
So what's your
we
favorite songs, old Savoy and new Savoy, that you like to play or did like to play?
yeah. Um. Well, I I think I've already called out a couple of them. I really like Street Corner Talk, and Poor Girl was fun. Uh, I really enjoyed Louisiana Blues. Um, uh, One time, for a short time, we gave a go to Jack the Toad, and that was really fun trying to bring that one back. And uh, those are probably my old favorites of the older ones. But with the new stuff, I liked. Uh, there was a song called "Guitar Slinger." That was a cool one. One of the newer ones. I think that was off "Witchy Feeling." Um, uh, I'm trying to think of some of my favorites. Oh, I have to say, I really enjoyed Cobra. It's an instrumental that he would sometimes open with, and it was just a really up 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 tempo boogie, and he would solo. There was a nice solo section in it, but it always got the crowd pumping. It was a lot of fun to play, and yeah, those are some of them right there for me.
Tell me some stories about Kim and the Road.
um,
Good one,
well,
not a bad one, a good one.
let's see. Hold on, I gotta pick something up. Some good stories. Well, I can tell you some. You want to hear one that is. I'm hoping this is not too. I'm not crossing a line, but I'll tell you a kind of a funny story. We were playing in Maine, and we were so uh, as we were going the after the show, we had they had a receiving line where people were signing, asking Kim to sign records and such. So at some point, this lady comes up and says, "Hi, Kim, do you remember me?" And he kind of looked at her and said, "Do you remember, Susie or what? I can't remember her name, but I just made it up. But my sister." And Kim said, "Oh yeah, she used to come to the shows at whatever place, and they talked about it." Well, then out of nowhere, she pulls out of her purse an urn, and she says, "Well, Susie passed away, but she would love for you to take her on the road with you." And
Wow.
and, and we just sort of sat there stunned for a minute, and Kim said, "No, I'm sorry. I mean, I appreciate the offer, but I don't think that would be appropriate." And she said, "Oh, okay," but she wanted to give us her sister's ashes to take on the road in the van. So,
That's a great story.
but yeah, there's some other ones that are like that too, But I have to think about them. But yeah, Kim was you know, he loved. I don't know if people, a lot of people don't know this, but he loved McDonald's. So Pat and I were always trying to convince him to do something besides McDonald's when we were on the road. So that was always a fun time trying to. But he would say, "Oh no, there's McDonald's. I can see the arches." I was like, "Oh, I do love McDonald's coffee, so that wasn't so bad."
So
But Pat and I were always trying to convince him to not do McDonald's.
so tell me something about Kim that no one knows. Something special about him.
That no one knows. Wow. Well, I don't. I can tell you some things that are probably not a lot of people know, but I don't know if I can tell you one that no one knows.
Well, a lot
For
of people. I mean, the general public sees him when they go see him in a show, but something about him they don't know about. Something that
well,
he's
yeah, I have to tell you, Kim was not only a creative songwriter and an awesome guitar player, but he was a very talented painter. I don't know if you knew that.
nope.
Um, he really spent a lot of time painting. His specialty was guitars. He would paint guitars, and you can see some of it at the website. And I feel very honored. I actually have one in my studio at home. And another thing that I'd like to mention, Kim was a fantastic cook, and he was especially a good Indian cook. And Pat and I would often go over to rehearse on Thursdays at his place. And sometimes he would invite us over. Oh, you know what? You guys want to eat before you go? Oh, yeah, sure. And he have some curry cooked up for us, and so he was great like that. Very creative, just super creative guy. Probably the most creative guy I've ever met.
Wow.
So yeah, so it
So
was
let's
great.
let's talk about the last record, this current record that just came out, Blues All Around. Tell me about how that came about.
Yeah, it's a little bit different than any of the ones I've ever done before with Kim. Any of the recordings we did before, we always went in live. The three of us always recorded live, and we were, right there. But this one, we knew Kim knew that he was dealing with his illness, and he knew that he couldn't spend long hours in the studio like he normally would. So the idea was he sent demos out early to the band and to the engineer at the studio where we were working, and kind of said, "This is what I'm thinking. What do you guys think? Can we do this?" And I had some reservations at first. I thought, "Oh wow, we've never done this." And but I have to say, it worked quite beautifully. Kim had already done the guitar stuff, a lot of vocals. Um, so uh, Pat and I went in together without Kim, and we played our basic track. We recorded our basic tracks over those demos, and then I think on day two, Pat Kim came in and gave us some instruction, checked up on us, and said, "Hey, this is cool. Let's try this." Gave us some suggestions. And he also put that day, I remember he recorded some of the keyboard parts, added harmonica parts. So he was pretty active that day with us. Um, but we had the big thing was, the big change was we had to build it from the ground up. It was not something we'd ever done together as a trio. The three of us always recorded live prior to that. So it worked wonderfully in the end. It did give me a different perspective to look at the music. So it was kind of cool. I had ideas to add some percussion stuff later on, which I did, throughout the week. Kim was in and out of the studio several times. After that, he added some. You'll notice on this recording, there's quite a bit of slide guitar, and the reason for that is Kim, by this point, was starting to feel some of the effects of chemotherapy, and one of that was neuropathy, and he wasn't feeling the ends of his fingers as well. So he was having a hard time forming, specific chords sometimes. So what he did with some solo sections was, um, he found that he could play slide pretty well with, in that condition. So that's what he did, and it worked out nice. So yeah, we ended up with a pretty good product, I think.
So what's in the future for you now that he's no longer around? What are you doing now outside of Savoy?
Yeah, well, I'm happy to report that Pat and I still are playing together. Now, it really ties into uh, Savoy Brown, and I'll tell you how. About maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we were playing a festival in Newton, Iowa. We were in Newton, Iowa, I remember. And there was a gentleman that played ahead of us. His name is Sean Chambers.
Yep.
And Sean's from Florida, and a guitar player, great guy, sweetheart of a guy, and a heck of a guitar player. And so he wanted to meet Kim, and I remember that day particularly because I was having some equipment issues, and Sean's drummer that he was using that day said to me, "Hey, you can use some of my stuff if you need." So we all hit it off. The bands, both bands hit it off. You know, we were very friendly with each other. We just had a good time that afternoon. And Sean and Kim's sort of became kindred spirits. They would often call each other and talk. So last year, it became apparent that Kim wasn't going to be able to tour. So uh, Sean had the idea that, hey, I'm putting a European tour together. Would you guys be interested um, in supporting it, with me? And we jumped at it, but we also said, well, Pat and I both said, we have to talk to Kim. And Sean said, of course. So we talked to Kim about it. Kim said, oh, that sounds great. Go for it. So in October, we did our first tour with Sean, and we've been playing together, doing some dates. In fact, next week I got to go back down to Florida to play with he and Pat, and so we've been having a pretty good time with that. It works out well because uh, Sean's also on Corto Valley Records, so we're label mates.
Yep.
And we're hoping to do a recording with Sean. And the best part of it for me is I get to play with Pat again as a rhythm section. So I'm really just thankful how this came about, and the tour was awesome. It was fun. Pat and I used to text Kim quite regularly anyway, but I would say once or twice a week during that tour, uh, the four of us, Sean and Kim and Pat and I would all get around the phone wherever we were, and we'd call Kim, and he would check up on us and say, "Hey, what's going on? Where are you guys doing? Oh yeah, where are you? I remember that place, and we
Yeah.
talk about it." And so he was full of advice, Kim was, and you know, wanted to wanted to give us some direction, and so it was great though. It was good. So
How about a road story?
a road story. Let's see. A road story. Man, I got so many of them. I'm trying to think of a good one to tell you that would that would um, that would that would really involve Kim. Um, I'm drawing a blank here, but
You said many. That's good. There's a lot of them.
yeah, we do have quite a few. Um, well, I can tell you one road story that was funny from when we were playing in Belgium, actually. So we had been touring all over Germany this particular week. So we somehow they threw in a Belgium date in the middle of this whole German tour. So we go into Germany, and so this at the show, we Kim was talking to the audience. I think he may have been tuning his guitar or something, and he says he's going on about how he loves German women. Oh, they're beautiful, and I love the German food. Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And finally, 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 Pat kind of sneaks up behind him and says, "Kim, we're in Belgium." He says, and and, and everybody started laughing. So that was a good one. I got one more story for you
Go ahead.
that I have to tell real quick that I just thought of. We were playing a festival in Niagara Falls, the Niagara Falls Blues Festival. So uh, I was backstage setting up, and Kim came up quickly and started messing around with the tuning on some amps that were there. And this one of the staff came up and said, "Excuse me, sir, I can't. This amplifier's for Mr. Brown. Kim looked at him and said, "I am Mr. Brown." We both started cracking up because obviously the guy wasn't aware of that Savoy Brown wasn't a person but a band.
Yeah.
So that was a
So
good one.
Savoy Brown. Now that Kim is gone, do you? I know you probably don't know the answer to this question, but will we be seeing any more Savoy Brown? Anything from Savoy Brown coming out at all?
I, I like to say yes. Um, I'll tell you why. Kim had so many. We used to write so much that I mean, we have a ton of demos. Kim's wife Debbie has a vault full of demos that he had. Some from years past, some are recent, and it's some of them are nearly done. Kim singing on them, just like we did recorded this last record. So it's entirely possible that you could see uh, that happen where we'd have to do some research and dig in deep to the vault, but you'd have to, you might hear Kim sing again on some of these songs that he's had if we can construct it properly. But what I've been telling people is if that happens, I'm hoping I can be involved. That would be great. Number two, it'd have to be done with the same sort of tenacity that he put into it. He really was, put his nose to the grindstone and tried to come up with the best recordings that he could. So, I really think that that's something that needs to be respected. You have to really, really spend some time working at it and getting the right players together. So, right engineers. So,
So
yeah.
Debbie has an archive, is what you're saying.
Yeah, pretty big one actually. Yeah. So,
Did he own all the rights to all those records, all the older records? Do you know?
well, I do know that he had lost them for a while, but I also know that he several years ago. I remember he had started to work with a lawyer, an entertainment lawyer, and he got quite a bit was starting to come back to him. So, and Debbie's still in working with these folks. So, yeah, he does have.
I'd love to.
I don't know exactly what he has the rights to, but I know he's got a lot now.
I'd love to see some reissues of some of the older records.
Yeah, I know, right? And how about I think was it Shakedown the first one that was done in
Yeah,
England? It never got released in America. The only one
right.
time I've ever seen it is when when people have bought it as an import. So that'd be
Yeah,
cool.
that's what I mean. If she has all those things, she should start reissuing some of that stuff that wasn't. And if there's any bonus stuff from those vaults, that would be great too.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there. We just gotta dig into it. I also know that he was working on a book. I'd like to see that come out. I don't really know where that is and what's going on with that, but I know he was working on that, and so I'd like to see a lot of that happen because I think that history needs to know about Kim. I think that he's a heavyweight, just every bit as much as those names that people know, like Clapton and Jeff Beck, and Kim's right up there with all of them.
Yep,
He's
you're right.
just, I think he's not as well known, but his body of work, I have to tell you, I'm not sure that many of the his contemporaries can match the body of work that he's put out. And
Nope.
he's just a highly creative individual. I was so honored to know him and be able to play and support him for almost 14 years, and call him my friend. So I really so grateful for the opportunity he gave me.
So the website is savoybrown.com, correct?
Yep, SavoyBrown.com. Go there. You can see a lot. If people want to know a little bit more about the discography, history of the band, there's a lot of stuff there. And like I said earlier, there's merchandise. And like I said earlier, there's some of his artwork there you can see. So
How do
there
we
you go.
find out about you?
Well, you can. I'm also on the Savoy Brown website. You can get to me. You can get me there. Get me on Facebook, Garnet Grimm. I'm on Facebook. You can get me through Sean Chambers. Uh, I'm up. Up on his Facebook as well. And Pat DeSalvo, same thing. You can reach us all through those ways. So
Well,
yeah.
best of luck with Sean Chambers and his record come. He's got a record coming, right? I think.
He released one during COVID, so that one is was interesting enough. We both recorded at the same studio. I remember going. This gentleman built Ben Elliott, who had in New Jersey, who had was just a fantastic engineer, and he unfortunately we lost him during COVID, but. He had done a lot of people you would know. Keith Richards for one. Um, I think he recorded Eric Clapton. But Sean, I remember walking into the studio when we were recording, and there was a stack of Sean's CDs there that Ben had just finished. And I remember talking to him about it. I said, "Oh my gosh, you're doing Sean as well?" And he said, "Yeah, I just got finished." So. Uh, uh, there's a lot of we always have a lot of similarities with Sean, and but he's got a record that came out during the COVID time, and he's currently writing for some new stuff. So he doesn't have one coming out, but hopefully we got one coming out soon in the future here.
And you
So.
guys will be on it. That's even better.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. I'm really grateful that I'm having another chance to play with Pat, and Sean's a sweetheart. I, uh, I really like working with him, so I'm looking forward to it.
Well, Garnet, I know you have another interview in a few minutes. I don't want to keep you any longer. I want to say thank you very
Yeah.
much. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, and really appreciate that you're keeping the blues alive for a long time. Wow.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
do I get? I gotta look it up. I gotta get one of your Blues Deluxe shirts. I like that.
I'll
So
get you one. Tell me offline. Send you could do it through John Lappin. Have him send me
yeah.
your info and your
Okay.
size, and I'll send you one. How's that?
All right. Very good. Thanks so much, John. We
You're
really
welcome.
appreciate
And
it.
if you guys
Yeah.
are ever come locally to Massachusetts again with Sean, let me know. We'll see if we can get you to come in.
Oh, great. That would be great. Yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
So yeah, tell John Lappin that you're gonna have him send me your info, your
Okay.
size, and I'll send it out to you. How's that?
Great.
All
When's
right.
your show? When's your show?
Something else you don't know. Saturdays, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And this weekend, I'm going to play this interview. And I'm
Oh,
going to play the whole Savoy Brown, the new one, in its entirety after it.
all right. Great. Thank you so much. I
How's that?
appreciate it. Great. Thanks. I'm going to check it out.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. I'll
Yep.
give
Bye
it.
bye.
Hey, by the way,
Yes.
www.wuml.org.
UML.org. Okay.
WUML.org. That's where it is.
All right. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye
Have a
bye.
good one.
Bye
Bye bye.
now.